Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the ideal list of Verdi operas. And this is quite the list, believe me. But first, I wanted to introduce you to my new scenic object here. This, there it is a UFIP. A UFIP tam-tam. UFIP stands for Unione Fabbricanti Italiani Piatti, and originally it was Piatti I Tam-Tams. And so I thought having an Italian tam-tam would be perfect for this discussion of Italy's greatest composer, at least greatest composer in the 19th century, Giuseppe Verdi, who made excellent use of this device in a few of his operas. Just so you can hear the difference, here's a little whack on this guy. Wait a minute here. There, we put that away. Cool, huh? It's really a very, very nice instrument. You know, it's lovely. It's structurally, this is similar to an to a Chinese wind gong, which is it's a flat tam-tam. It doesn't have a turned rim, an inward pointing rim, but I'm going to have a few big inward pointing rim ones in the future. But I just love this one, and I think it's perfect for our discussion of Italian masterpieces. Now, Verdi operas are a world unto themselves. There are 26 of them, but if you add in revisions and rewrites and whatnot, you really get about another dozen out of them, because he always had problems with the censors. He had to change names, he had to change locations, he had to recompose some of them, for example, for performance in France, where you added a ballet and did all kinds of other things. And also, along the way, he would simply revise certain things. They're just revised operas, Simone Boccanegra, Macbeth, Don Carlo, like 50 times. There's tremendous variety in all of these different versions as well, which makes life somewhat complicated if you are a Verdian. But I have chosen, let me explain to you how this is going to work. This is an ideal list. What that means is it's not necessarily my favorite version of everything, and it doesn't have to be the best version of everything. What it has to be is a list with no weak links whatsoever, so that if you get these recordings, you're going to have an absolutely terrific selection of operas to get to know the works, to hear them at really their finest. And if you like other singers or other versions, you can always go off on your own and get more of them. But I think that this is a really good list, and I've chosen 15 operas, and I've grouped them. I've grouped them in trios, so that you can take them one trio at a time. I really think that this is going to work out very well. These trios are done sort of as early, a couple from the middle, because the middle period is the longest, and then there are the three at the end, which are simply Aida, Falstaff, and Otello, or Aida, Otello, and Falstaff, if you want to do them in order. And that's the Verdi operas. But then there is one trio where I just picked from all the rest of them. I didn't group them by period. I wasn't worried about that. I just wanted to have a selection of three other superb operas that don't really belong to any particular group. And I'm very curious, after I do my ideal list, to see your ideal list, but in particular to see your free pick trio from all of the rest of them. Three operas that you particularly enjoy, but that may not be among the best known and most popular. Really, when you consider it, the fact that he wrote, I can come up rather easily with at least a dozen, if not 15, really 15 operas that are all in the basic repertoire is really an extraordinary thing. There isn't, I think, any other composer who wrote so many operas that are so frequently performed. The only other one, of course, is Wagner, but he wrote many fewer. I mean, he wrote Wagner's basic repertoire is if you count The Ring as one. I mean, you really shouldn't. You should count it as four. But it's basically about 7 operas, right? Isn't it? I mean, it's Dutchman, Tannhäuser, Lohengrin, Tristan, The Ring, Meistersinger, and Parsifal. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. 7 operas. If you add 3, you get 11. So with Verdi, you get a dozen and maybe 3 or 4 more. It's fairly equal. They're really 2 stunning legacies. Let's put it that way. And this is the Italian side, and it is fun because Verdi operas are fun. Among the fact, in addition to being tuneful and gorgeous and scenic and all the other things. So let's just get right to it and start going down the list. Now, we begin with Nabucodonosor, Nebuchadnezzar. This is early Verdi. This is his 3rd opera, and it is the one that really got the ball rolling as far as his reputation goes, because it basically has what was the Italian national anthem and was the anthem of the Risorgimento for the unification of Italy. Verdi's career was built as much on his success politically, because not that he meant to be political in that sense. I mean, he did. I mean, he was an ardent nationalist and Italian unifier person, supporter type guy. But the operas themselves were taken that way by audiences of the day, and Verdi didn't do anything to discourage that. And the big tune is the chorus of Hebrew slaves, Va Pensiero, which you've heard it. It goes, Va Pensiero sulla lidorati. It's just beautiful. And actually, Anna Russell has done a fabulous description of the plot of this opera, which is just marvelous. And it contains one of Verdi's greatest soprano roles for Abigail, whatever her name is in Italian. She is this super duper fire-breathing harpy who is very annoyed when she's jilted in love. And she tries to kill everybody, including her own father, Nebuchadnezzar, who it turns out isn't really her father. It turns out she's really the daughter of a peasant. It's a whole long story. And she dies. All you need to know in the end, she dies. But she sings a cabaletta about how she's going to ascend the blood-stained throne, which is about one of the most exciting pieces in all opera and in all early Verdi. And Gena Dimitrova does it in this performance. This is the Sinopoli performance. Now, Gena Dimitrova didn't make too many opera recordings. She was this big Bulgarian soprano with a voice the size of a house. It was huge. And this was the perfect role for her. This is her best recording on disc, in my view, because she just cuts loose. It's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. This whole performance is just really one of those red-blooded, exciting, kind of unsubtle, noisy. I mean, it's what early Verdi is supposed to be. It just gets your pulse pounding. Also, you get Piero Capuccilli, Placido Domingo, Yevgeny Nestorenko, and Lucia Valentini Teherani as Finena and Lucia Pop. I mean, it's a great cast. And it's with the Deutschen Oper Berlin. Can't go wrong. Cannot go wrong. So begin your life with Nabucco or Nabucodonosor or whatever you want to call it. It's fantastic. It's great. Great. Then, let's see, what's next? Ernani. Ernani was like Verdi's first huge success. Actually, this was his 3rd opera, right? Nabucco was the 2nd. I don't know. They're early. Yeah, I think Nabucco was number 2, and this is number 3. And Ernani is just the dumbest plot. Oh my God, it's so stupid. Everybody is dressed as everybody else. Everybody is in love with Elvira, and Elvira is just one of those. She does nothing but like feel miserable and lament, and she's in love with Ernani, who's a bandit, but he's really a nobleman because his land was confiscated, and everybody's threatening to kill everybody, and they're all swearing vows of vengeance, but but because they all love Elvira, they all want to kill each other. And Ernani finally, because he's an honorable guy, agrees he'll do a favor to Silva, who saves him and Elvira from the evil clutches of King Carlo, who was the guy who stole Ernani's land. And then at the end, when Elvira kills herself and or she takes poison or something's going to happen. I don't know if she dies or she wants to die and she's trying to die. And then Silva gives Ernani a dagger and tells him to stab himself. And because he's an honorable guy and promised he'd do him a favor, he does. He stabs himself and he drops dead. And it's just ludicrous. It's so ludicrous. And it was nowhere more so than in the unbelievably stupid Met production where it was like one of those big unit sets. And it had no place for anyone to hide. You can't do Ernani unless you've got places to hide, because everybody's plotting against everybody else, and everyone's overhearing the plotting of everyone against everyone else, and you gotta hide. But there was nowhere to hide in the Met. They're just like standing there next to each other, talking about each other while they pretend not to hear each other, and they have to pretend that they're like listening when they're standing right there in front of them. I mean, oh God, it's stupid. Anyway, music is glorious. The music is just glorious, and that's what matters. And you've got, this is the one to get. I mean, you've got Leontine Price as Donna Elvira and Carlo Bergonzi as Ernani, Bergonzi was famous for being an elegant tenor, a tenor of intelligence and finish and technique and poise, which is really great for a character who is all honor and nobility, no brains whatsoever. And Don Carlo is Mario Sereni, and Don Roy Gomez de Silva is Ezio Flagello. And this is under Thomas Shippers with the RCA Italiana Opera Orchestra and Chorus, and it's fun. It's just fun. It's just, forget the plot, but it's fun. Then, for the third in this trio of early-ish Verdi operas, early-ish, you have Macbeth. Now, Macbeth is just a flat-out masterpiece. It's absolutely fantastic, and it was revised very heavily by Verdi, and the revised version is the one that's always performed, and rightly so, because it's got like all the famous numbers, including some of the earlier famous numbers. So you get the best of both worlds, but you get the mad scene. Oh, the grand, mad sleepwalking scene for Lady Macbeth, which is one of the earlier numbers, but it's just terrific. And you get her big aria, La luce langue, light thickens. It's Shakespeare's light thickens speech. I mean, Lady Macbeth is the big character here, right? And there's a great Brindisi, a drinking song with the nobleman where the ghost of Banquo pops up. It's like, da-dum, ba, da, da-dum, da-dum, ba, da, da, da. Oh, it's just so much fun. So, this is my favorite one. This is with Riccardo Muti, and you've got Cheryl Milnes as Macbeth, and Lady Macbeth is Fiorenza Casotto, and one of her, she was always a seconda donna, the mezzo-soprano second role, and here she gets to shine, and she just goes for it. It's fabulous. And Rogero Raimondi is Banquo, and Jose Carreras is Macduff, and it's just a wonderful cast, but it's the Philharmonia and Muti at his early, fiery best. And the most exciting thing about this is the choruses of witches. Boy, do they fly. I mean, Muti just rips into them. My God, it's exciting. Absolutely exciting. And the big incantation scene, you got a tam-tam. Yes, a tam-tam, which is always an added attraction. And maybe it was a UFIP. Who knows? No, probably not in Verdi's day. I don't think they had UFIP then, but it doesn't matter. This is just a great performance, and I think that, the other great one is Claudio Abbato's. Those are the two. But this one is wonderful, and it's my pick for the cast. So that gets us through the earlier Verdi operas, although Macbeth is a hybrid. And then we have to go to sort of middle period. Now, middle period is... the highlight of the middle period is the great trilogy, smack dab in the middle. And it's from the middle of the 19th century. It's also like the 1850s. And what's really fascinating about this is that both Verdi and Wagner hit their sort of maturity, their middle maturity, if you want to call it that, at exactly the same time. The ring operas were at least begun to be composed in 1848, 1850s, and Verdi's middle period operas were done at exactly the same time. It's as if romantic opera came of age in 1850. And the three operas are, you know what they are, Rigoletto, Traviata, and Trovatore. Oh, they're so wonderful. So wonderful. And so for Rigoletto is really a fascinating opera. It's a revolution in the history of Italian opera, as Verdi scholars have pointed out. The first scene, for example, which plays for a good 20 minutes, is a completely continuous musical section. It doesn't break up into little bits. It is a musical object as large and flowing as any of the largest paragraphs composed by Wagner. It's absolutely unique. And in the last act, for example, the moaning chorus, which does the thunderstorm, it's a male chorus that just goes, became the snoring chorus in Wozzeck. Rigoletto influenced like everybody. And it's got great tunes. It's got La Donna e Mobile, you can't go wrong with Rigoletto. It gave Verdi unbelievable pains with the censors because the plot was considered scandalous. I mean, Gilda, who was in love with the Duke, and he takes advantage of her. She's a young girl, and he basically rapes her, but it turns out that she loves him anyway, and so she sacrifices her life for him, gets stabbed to death, and Rigoletto is the hunchback, mangled jester who's trying to get revenge on everybody, and it all backfires, and it's just great. Absolutely great. And my choice for Rigoletto is this one. This is the Kubelik. It's a little bit of an unusual choice. It's sort of a thinking man's Rigoletto, but it's a plot that isn't dumb. It's really very, very thoughtful. And the story's terrific. You've got Fischer Dieskau as Rigoletto, Renata Scotto as an amazing Gilda. She was young and in fresh voice, and she was a real Kunstdiva. She was smart, and she sings with such knowledge and theatrical accuracy. She inhabits the role. Carlo Bergonzi again as the Duke. Fiorenza Casotto as Fiorenza Casotto. No, Maddalena, the smuggler's sister. Anyway, it's a great cast. It's a great performance in Kubelik. Not what the most Italianate in idiom people say, whatever that means. I have never understood when people say those things. I get some of it sometimes, but Rigoletto is just an amazing international classic, and this is an amazing international performance. And you do have the La Scala Orchestra as well on Deutsche Grammophon. So that's my choice for Rigoletto. Now, Traviata. Traviata is one of those operas that's so iconic and so legendary, and every great soprano with a high whatever takes it on. And it's another really great story. It's the hooker with a heart of gold story, right? And it's just, and it's the one that, Maria Callas never really got to record in her full flush of Maria Callasness. I guess callousness sort of worked in more ways than one, didn't it? But, it's the one. And so everyone's got their favorites, but it's an opera that's so hard to do. It has so many subtleties and angles, and people nitpick at the role of Violetta to the point of just insanity. They really do. They just everybody has their thing about who the best Violetta is and what she needs to do, and whether you play the whole opera or you cut it because the second act is really long. Anyway, just get the Kleiber. Just get this one. It's with Ileana Kotrubash in her best role as Violetta. And I remember talking to her about it, and she was very proud of this, and not in a vain or operatic diva-like way, but she was really, even when I spoke to her years and years later, she was very moved by the role and by the opportunity to participate in this recording, and it really is wonderful. And who else is in it? Oh, like famous people. Let's see, you get Violetta, and there's all these other people. Giorgio, Cheryl Milnes, and in the tenor person is Placido Domingo. Again, he shows up in a lot of these things. It's unavoidable. Him and Pavarotti, and Jose Carreras and those people. They're in these. Anyway, this is the one to get. Kleiber Traviata to start your journey through Traviata. Then you can just acquire dozens of them and be just as miserable and unsatisfied as all the other Traviata people. I mean, you've just never met a bigger collection of whiny, bitchy, annoying people than the Traviata people. But it's measured, I guess, of how deeply that opera touches everyone, that people take it so personally. They really do. They get into fights over Traviata. It's really something. I mean, nobody fights over Kundry, and Parsifal, or, no one cares. But Violetta, oh boy, they care. And I remember playing, by the way, the closing scene, when I was in the pit orchestra doing as special guest bass drummist. And, as she's dying, when she says, take this letter and give it to your sister, this portrait of me, and give it to your sister. Oh, it's just so pathetic. But the music, it's going, yum, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, with the bass drum thumping on you, going like, holy crap, that's Mahler third. So if you're a Mahler person, you better listen to Traviata, because Mahler got a huge amount of his idiom from the Italian operas that he conducted in his apprentice days in the musical spas and provincial opera houses around Germany. And Traviata was a big influence. Actually, that motive, the death motive in Verdi, which is that march rhythm with a bass drum underpinning, it occurs throughout Verdi's operas, is also Mahler's. And it's so interesting to follow that. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. Finally, the third in the trio of middle Verdi classics, or early middle Verdi, because then there's later middle Verdi, is Trovatore. Trovatore is one of those operas, again, where the plot has come in for its measure of ridicule, because it really is silly and preposterous, but oh, so much fun. Oh my God, it's fun. And the story is that Traviata requires the 4 greatest singers in the world, because it has 4 stunning roles with fabulous, fabulous arias for everybody, and they all just have to sing their lungs out. I mean, that's the requirement. And there's no way around it. There's nowhere to hide in Traviata, because all of the melody is just deep, wonderful, lyrical, intense vocal melody. And the orchestra is treated in a very primitive way. They call it the giant guitar. It just accompanies with like really rich, firm rhythm for the most part. And the story. It's Azucena, the gypsy. She mixes up the babies, and one of them becomes the evil count and the other becomes her son, but they're mixed up. And Leonora is in love with her son, who's really a gypsy bandit, and Count Belluna really loves her, and they're actually brothers, but they don't know it, and they all wind up killing each other. And she takes poison, Leonora. The only one who lives at the end is Azucena, the crazy gypsy, who did the whole thing. And you get the anvil chorus, which became, for reasons I have never understood, the ultimate laundry detergent commercial. For Biz or Does or Buzz or whatever that crap was, and a bunch of other laundry detergents. You cannot wash laundry unless you hear da 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 da. It's laundry. Anyway, this recording is a classic. Jussi Björling as Manrico, and Zinka Milanov as Leonora. The classic Zinka Milanov. You got to have a Zinka Milanov doing something. And Leonard Warren is the Count de Luna, and Fedora Barbieri as Azucena. And this is also the RCA Victor Orchestra under Renato Cellini with the Robert Shaw Chorale. Beautiful performance. You may want to get, the Leontine Price, of course, is the other big one. The Leontine Price, Domingo, it was her first big Verdi recording. It was Placido Domingo's first opera recording. I think actually Price had done some other stuff. Anyway, get your Trovatore and just have a good time with it. It's so much fun. Wow, is it fun. So now we do the late middle Verdis. So late middle Verdis are another 3. And this is our third triad of operas. First, Un ballo in maschera, the masked ball. This was the one about the assassination of Gustav II of Sweden, which was considered so dangerous by the censors that they moved it to Puritan Boston, and it's really a mess. Now, I had a long conversation with Phil Gossett, the great late Verdi scholar, about trying to get a critical edition of Ballo and Maschera, which is apparently a nightmare. Recently, the tendency has been to return it to its original locale, to put it back into Sweden and rename all the characters, give them their original names from the play. But and apparently Verdi's original score actually did that. I mean, that's where it was set, and you can make out the original names and vocal lines and things and whatnot. So it's possible to restore it, but doing it is a big project and quite difficult. And there are issues with getting manuscripts from the Verdi family. They're still around, and they're just pains in the ass because they're relatives. You know, it's always a headache dealing with the relatives of great composers because they feel that they're never being treated as importantly as they deserve to be. I mean, I could do a whole talk on the horrible, horrible families of the great composers that I've run into, and believe me, there's just not a redeeming person amongst them. Oh, maybe Peter Bartok. He was a good guy. But the truth of the matter is, you've got this terrific opera wherever they stick it. I mean, having the gypsy on Boston Common is just a little bit silly, you know. I mean, it really is. But this is a great cast, and this is really fun. I mean, Ulrika, that's her, the witch. I always forget all these names. Ulrika, Abominella, Diphtheria, you know, whatever they're called, Dieffenbachia. I don't know. These different people, these awful names. Okay, so here's the bottom line. Let's see who's in this one. Okay, again, Carlo Bergonzi is Riccardo. And let's see, Cornell McNeil is Renato, because you've got the conspirators who are going to assassinate Riccardo at the masked ball. But Emilia is the big role, and Emilia is a very interesting role. Here it's Birgit Nilsson in one of her very few Verdi roles. She did Aida too. She was not a Verdi soprano, as you may have guessed, but Emilia is a real dramatic soprano role. I mean, Leontine Price did it. Lots of Verdi sopranos do it, but it's a very strenuous role that requires a lot of voice, and it's much more declamatory than a lot of other Verdis, and just the tessitura and all that, it fits. It fits very well if you're a Wagnerian soprano. And so this is Birgit Nilsson's greatest Verdi role. And who's the conductorist? I think it's Schulte, right? Like, yeah, it's Schulte with the Accademia di Santa Cecilia di Roma on Decca. So this is my favorite Ballo and Maschera. There's also a trouser role, you know, a girl dressed up as a guy who sings Oscar, who's this goofy little Cherubino type, you know, ball type. A lot of the music is very, very gracious. It's lots of dance music, waltz music. It's beautiful, beautiful score, full of delicate filigree and wonderful. You know, Verdi was very concerned with capturing what he called the tinta, the color, the atmosphere of the story. And this one really sounds like no other Verdi opera, and I just love it, and you will too. So that's my pick for Ballo. And so second in our late middle Verdi is La Forza del Destino, or as they said in The Odd Couple in German, Die Macht des Schicksal. Yeah, which is just tremendous. La Forza del Destino has had a lot of good recordings, maybe because the plot is so stupid that everybody just goes out and sings and has a good time, and no one, I don't know, it just is fun. I mean, the story is, you know, Leonora, it's another Leonora, she's the head here, and who's it, Don Alvaro or Don Carlo, and you know, one of these guys, yeah, she's in love with Alvaro or Carlo, and I never remember which one they are. Anyway, they're in love, and her father walks in, and he stabs him her boyfriend stabs him by accident, and he dies, and so they become, you know, Leonora has another boyfriend who's supposed to marry her, and so they have to run away, and he vows vengeance, and she goes, decides to become a hermit and live for the rest of her life in a cave where she basically goes and then does nothing until she sings Pace Pace Mio Dio, which justifies the fact that she's been sitting in a cave for 2 or 3 acts. And the rest of them chase each other all over Spain. And then there's this drum majorette called Prezio Silla, who is this alto who sings the Rataplan chorus, where they're all going yumbity bumbity 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 bumbity, the snare drums going. And she hangs out with the troops and just basically, hangs out with the troops and sings lots of things. And at the end, they all wind up jumping off a cliff. And there's 2 endings. There's the original ending, which involves them jumping less precipitously than they, or more I don't know. The original version was done quite well, by the way, by Valery Gergiev, but because it was written for St. Petersburg, by the way, so it was originally done in Russia, and everyone else does the revised ending. And there's so many good performances of this opera, considering how long it is and how difficult it is and how silly it is. But again, music's fabulous, so who cares? This is the Decca version with Renata Tibaldi. You gotta have a Tibaldi as Leonora, and Mario Del Monaco and Ettore Bastianini as Don Carlo. Oh, it's so much fun. And Maria Del Monaco is her boyfriend Alvaro, and Prezio Silla is Giulietta Simeonato, and Padre. Oh yeah, there's a priest who's always talking to Leonora when she becomes the holy hermit. It's Cesare Siepi, and there's Fernando Corena. I mean, it's a really good Italian cast, and it really is a very Italian opera in the sense that it's just a lot of physicality to it and lyricism, just beautiful, wonderful lyricism. And this is again with Santa Cecilia di Roma, a nice screechy, noisy orchestra in those days, conducted by Francesco Molinari Pradelli. What could be better? Yes, La Forza. And then let's see, what do we have next? Oh, the ultimate late middle period Verdi opera, Don Carlo. Now, Don Carlo exists in about 50,000 different versions. Verdi never stopped tinkering with it. It was originally composed for Paris in French, so it has 5 big acts plus a ballet, and it's just juicy. And then Verdi reduced it to 4 acts, and there's also a 5-act version in Italian, then there's the 4-act version in Italian, then there's other versions, and he never quite knew what to do with the ending because no one knows what happens in the end. It's kind of amazing you could write an opera with such precision so many different times and not have a clue what happens in the end. But basically what happens is that Carlo is fighting for his life. Don Carlo basically is the least important character, by the way, in the opera, but he's the object of much political intrigue. And it looks like Charles V comes out of his catacomb because he's not really dead, but they thought he was dead. And he's living in his tomb, and he grabs Carlo and sucks him into the grave and runs away. And that's what happens. But you've got some fantastic writing for the male voices, and not Carlo. It's for these guys, these other people, for the Grand Inquisitor and Philip II. It's one of the great scenes in all of Verdi. And there's an auto da fe where they burn all the infidels and the Jews and all the other people they like to kill in Spain, and the voice from heaven calls them up to their eternal rest. Oh, it's just delicious. It's the biggest Verdi grand opera before Aida, and it's the biggest Verdi opera before Aida, and it's really just a great piece. It's not really about much of anything. It's about politics and power more than anything else. And you've got 2 great female roles. You have Elisabetta di Valois, and you also have what's her name? Yes, you have what's her name? The Princess Eboli, who sings O Don Fatale, oh fatal gift of love, because everybody wants me because I'm such a sex pot. Oh, it's just a great opera. All right, and this is the Giulini recording, which is the one I think you should sort of start with. Everyone should have it. It's in the 5-act version, and it's with Placido Domingo, Montserrat Caballé, Shirley Verrett, Cheryl Milnes, Rogero Raimondi. I mean, just a great cast. It's on EMI Warner, and it's in this cheapy opera edition, which is really handy, and it's phenomenal. Simply phenomenal. There are other wonderful performances. There's a Schulte on Decca, which is great. There's the new Papano, which is very good. There's the Carillon 4-act version, which is really good. It's all just great stuff. And it's one of those operas that people really like to sink their teeth into because it's a Schiller. The play is by Schiller. It's a German play. And, Schiller was very idealistic and intellectually nuanced, much of which gets stripped out when you turn his plays into opera libretti. And believe me, if you don't strip that out, you get lousy opera libretti and boring operas. Because you cannot do everything a play does with chatty, 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 when you have to get out there and just belt it out in song. But Don Carlo has really been the Verdi opera that I think has had the biggest rise in its estimation of quality over the 20th century, because it really is a big, serious opera, and it's just marvelous. So now we come to the last three. The final trilogy. Now, let's see. Aida. Aida, like the world's second or first most popular opera in the universe. I don't need to say anything about Aida except that it's fabulous, and that the entire final scene gets recast, rescored, and reshaped in the Adagio of Mahler's Fourth Symphony. It's one of the pieces that Mahler was most influenced by, and one of the themes became the second of Mahler's Kindertotenlieder as well. Exactly, note for note. The same tune. Da 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 da. It's amazing. Anyway, you got to get Leontine Price doing Aida, and you got to get her first one. Not the remake with Leinsdorf. The original one on Decca was Schulte with Rita Gore and John Vickers and Robert Merrill. And I saw Price do this at the Met. That was one of the great operatic happenings that you could see. And it's her role, not because she's African American, but because it fit her voice perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. It's one of the great Verdi sopranos. This is one of the great Verdi roles, and boy, is this a hot Aida. And I don't need to say anything else about it because everyone knows this performance. Schulte's conducting is exciting as hell. You really get to hear the tam-tam, and it's really nice to have Rita Gore. Rita Gore was a wonderful, wonderful mezzo-soprano. She did that great Delilah in the Prêtresse sans Dalila. And she is a great Amneris, too. So this is just fabulous. Fabulous performance. Then we have Otello. Otello is another opera which has been reasonably lucky on disc. It's, an imperishably great work. It also requires unbelievably fabulous singing, especially the title role of Nutella. That's what it's called, Nutella. Yes, so, Nutella is a tenor, and Desdemona is his wife, and they're really interesting people in this opera. And of course, Iago, who's just evil. And my choice for Otello has always been, and this is also maybe a little controversial, but I love this performance, Tullio Serafin on RCA with, get this, it's John Vickers as Otello, because Otello, again, it's a Helden tenor role. It's a Wagnerian tenor role. It requires that kind of stamina and that sort of, also a high degree of sensitivity in the last act. But basically, it's a heroic tenor role. And Leonie Rieseneck is Desdemona. And this is one of her great roles. Rieseneck was one of those amazing sopranos. She had like incredible high notes and low notes and nothing in the middle. She's really into Desdemona. And let's see, who's Tito Gobi? Yes, Tito Gobi was the great Iago of our day, and this is just phenomenal. Tullio Serafin is the conductor with the Rome Opera Chorus and Orchestra. Very, very well recorded, by the way. In, 1960? Yeah, 1960. This is one of those living stereo things, basically. Yes, it says living stereo. Great sonics. It's just a knockout, an absolute knockout. And you hear the organ pedal at the opening. Under the opening chorus, it goes on for like 10 minutes. Just this low rumbling that creates this threatening atmosphere throughout the whole first scene. Just a fantastic performance. And so that's my Otello. and I think it's wonderful. But there are others. There are others. There's also the great Levine with Renato Scotto as Desdemona, and Domingo, fresh and young, because he recorded it like 5 times or something. I don't know. Finally, we get Falstaff. Now, Falstaff, it is one of those what they call late miracles. I mean, a perfect comic opera, light, bubbly, exquisitely scored. It is not terribly cast dependent because it's an ensemble piece, a really serious ensemble piece. There aren't, aside from Quandero Paggio, which is like the world's shortest aria, it's like 30 seconds long, and then Fenton's sonnet at the beginning of Act 3, there aren't that many, there are no real set pieces. You've got the big honor monologue for Falstaff as well. But other than that, there's not a lot for these soloists as soloists. They're all interacting together, and it has to have that kind of ensemble. And you must hear Toscanini. I mean, Toscanini was like, there. He played in the orchestra for Verdi. He knew Verdi. This is the tradition. Now, there have been people who say that late Toscanini particularly, and this was reasonably late. What was this? This was like 1950. So it's quite late, but it's in good sound, which is important. And it's mono, but it's crystal clear. And it's a wonderful ensemble cast with Giuseppe Valdengo, and Ervinelli and Nan Merriman and, Teresa Stick-Randall and Frank Guerrera and Chloe Elmo. And, these are not singers who are, what you might call household words, but they're all good. And Toscanini, it's his show. It's his show. This is one of the few Verdi operas that you could really say is a conductor's opera. And Toscanini was the Falstaff conductor par excellence. He put his heart and soul into making this, and I really believe, there have been many fine Falstaffs. There really are. They're very, very good. There's Giuliani's and Carillons and, Bernstein's. There are quite a few. But it all starts here. And so I really think because the sonics don't get in the way of enjoyment, that this is the Falstaff you got to hear just for, what the opera is. And then you take off again. You triangulate and listen to other performances of it. So, Toscanini for Falstaff. So that is the 12 ideal Verdi operas that are what I might call the most essential picks. But I also have in this ideal list 3 more. And I'm going to get them now. Whoa, here they are. I have them here. And I just want to talk about them briefly as the addendum to the ideal list, because they're just, the more you listen to these things, there's so much good stuff that people can't listen to, because when you write 26 operas plus revisions and whatnot, it's too much to ask that everybody listen to 26 of your operas alone all the time. So they come and go, but there's some really good ones. One of the recent finds from early Verdi is Attila. Attila is fun. First of all, the Hun, Attila the Hun, is the good guy. He's a noble guy. His girlfriend, Oda Bella, is her name. She's trying to poison everybody. There's a wonderful scene where she wants to kill Attila, but the other guy wants to kill Attila, and she knows he's trying to kill Attila, so she stops him and saves Attila's life because she says, "No, I want to kill him. I'm gonna get it." And at the end, she finally does get him, and Attila does the you too, Oda it's et tu Brute, then fall Attila. It's like Shakespearean. It's very, very good. It has the trashiest thunderstorm ever by any composer. It is early Verdi at his screechy, noisy. Oh, it's just awful music and so much fun to listen to just because it's so bad. It's wonderful. There's no reason for it. Ostensibly it sets up a shipwreck with all these, the rebels stranded on an island or something, but it doesn't matter. It's just terrible music, and I love every single second of it. And the opera itself has got one of the great Verdi lines from the Risorgimento, where they're carving up the territory, and what's his name here? Let's see, it's Attila, Oda Bella, Foresto, Ezio. Yeah, it's Foresto. says, you can have, all the rest of the universe, but leave Italy to me. And of course, the audience in 1830 or 1840 something went nuts. Yes, because they were trying to become independent from Austria, from the Habsburg monarchy. So this is the Muti recording with Sam Raimi, Cheryl Studer, Neil Shikoff, and Giorgio Zaccanaro, and with the La Scala Orchestra. It's the best one, hands down. Just exciting as hell and full of good music. It's wonderful opera. It moves so fast. It's just blindingly exciting. And so that's why you should get Attila. And you may want to try another early one. I mean, there are a lot of other ones that are really good, but that's just fun. Next, Luisa Miller. And here I have the performance I'm picking. I'll just tell you which one it is. It's Pavarotti and Caballé. It's in the Peter Mogg box. I mean, I had it separately too. It's floating around in different places. But this is Peter Mogg is the conductor, and it's in the new Eloquence Peter Mogg box. So that's where I have it. Luisa Miller is another Schiller story. And, it's a wonderful story. The play was called Kabbalah und Liebe, intrigue and love, which is always good. And everyone kills everybody at the end. It's quite fabulous. I mean, Luisa gets condemned. They all get condemned to death, and she dies, and their father stabs the guy. And it's just great. But the wonderful thing about Luisa Miller is it really shows Verdi's ability to capture the tinta, the color of the story. It's a tragedy, but it takes place in a pastoral setting, and it really the feel, the color, the sonority, the atmosphere of the opera is like no other in Verdi. It doesn't have any of that sort of blood and thunder kind of. He gets the gentleness of the story, but rises to great heights of passion where required. So Luisa Miller is another one that I would definitely recommend you sample, and it's hovering there in the repertoire. It lives on the fringes of the repertoire pretty well. Finally, however, if you have to pick one extra opera by Verdi that you must have, it's Simone Boccanegra. Now, this is another one that exists in two versions because the original plot was so preposterous that before he started doing Otello, Verdi had Boito take the libretto in hand and reshape it, and he rewrote whole scenes, including the fabulous council chamber scene, which got added, which is vintage late Verdi, and made the plot even sillier and less comprehensible. I can't even begin to describe what it has to do. It has to do with vengeance, and over a multi-generational period. There's a prologue that takes place 20 years before the opera, and the lead soprano is actually younger than her parents or older than her parents, or forget it. And how they're all related to everyone else, you'll never figure out. It doesn't matter. The music is glorious. Vintage Verdi. Vintage, fabulous. It was great early Verdi, and it's great late Verdi combined. And there's really there's no stylistic inconsistency between them. There isn't. I just love this piece. And this is the Claudio Abbado recording. It's one of the great Verdi recordings ever made. With, let's see, who else is in the cast here? Piero Cappuccilli and Mirella Freni and Nikolai Kierov and Jose Carreras and Jose Van Damme. What's not to love? So I am going to close this talk on essential ideal Verdi operas with Simone Boccanegra. Simon Boccanegra. That's Simone, right? Isn't his name Simone? Yeah. It's Simon Boccanegra. But, yeah, okay. Simone Boccanegra. Forget Simone. Simone Boccanegra. And it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And with that, we have an enormous collection of operas by one of the great geniuses of the 19th century. But I assure you, if you get any of the things in this idea list, you will be in great Verdi shape. And take your time. God knows. I mean, 15 Verdi operas, this is days and days and days and weeks and months and years and a lifetime of listening. So there isn't any rush. Just get out there, find something that interests you, give it a shot, and get to know it. Don't like just play it and stick it away and then go on to the next one. Get to know it. Listen, and listen. Listen with the libretto. Listen intently, and you will be transported, because this is great, fabulous, wonderful music. And it belongs in everybody's serious collection, whether you're an opera buff or not, because great music is great music. Period. Thank you for joining me, friends. Thank you for listening. I know this has been another long one. Keep on listening and take care.